welcome to the Creativity Conference's official podcast. My name is Aidan Rhode. I am the assistant manager here at the Creativity Conference, and I'm very excited to be hosting this podcast with some world-class creatives to discuss all aspects of creativity. Today, I'm joined by Mark Mann, who is an incredible world-renowned portrait photographer of athletes, celebrities, US presidents, and many, many more. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Well, I was doing all right, but this last wave of nonsense is just like, ugh. But I'm doing okay. I think I've found this kind of. We've been through this cycle so many times that I think I think I found a way to kind of like get into the mode of, this is what's happening, but I'm not gonna let it affect the things that are most important, or try not to, like family and work and creativity. So I think I'm almost kind of used to the pattern.
Yeah, you delivered a fantastic presentation for us back in the online iterations of the Creativity Conference back in August and in January 2021. How did you find the conference experience? Did you attend any other sessions other than your talks and panels?
I think it's a really nice forum because you're not only talking. You as a presenter have to think a little further than just a photographer. And what does a photographer do? You're really forced to focus on the creativity of your profession, and that's not often what people in photography lectures or forums want to hear. They want to hear what f-stop do you use, and what camera you use. And what's really nice about this forum is that forcing me as a presenter to think about how I actually do things in the process, and that's very challenging for me. And it's something I try and avoid thinking about a lot because I don't really come up with very good answers. And then when you add that to having to explain that to people, it's just like, whoa, this is tough, but challenging. And as we all know, when you're challenged, you do a better job than when you can just kind of call it in.
Yeah, it keeps it creatively stimulating and
Yeah.
keeps things fresh. Going back to what you were saying earlier, with this recent wave of Omicron sweeping the nation, how has the pandemic affected your workflow and your creativity in general? Did you find that you were creatively stifled or enabled in certain ways?
I think briefly, when in 2020 everything shut down, I think I lost the plot, like everybody else lost the plot. And then as the reality of what was happening started to set in, I watched as a lot of my peers just, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And I know from my own, just knowing myself for however long I've known myself, a lot of years I've known myself, that doesn't work for me. I can't force something. And I know that from experience, I eventually it falls into place for me, but the more I try and force it, the less that happens. So I was kind of holding out for this moment of like, oh, this is what I got to do, or this is what I want to do. And it didn't come for quite a while. But what I was doing in the meantime was I kind of came up with a project that I could do. Well, first of all, I tried to shoot some landscape. Not good. Just wow, I can't. I have no concept of this. I made a valiant effort, went out in my kind of Wellington boots and stuff, and marching off to places and setting the camera up. And like, fuck, I can't even. I don't know what I'm doing. So that failed. But I did go back and I retouched. I retouched about 250 pictures from jobs that I had done previously. I took my whole archive to where I was, and it was interesting for me to look at jobs that I had done, maybe 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and go, wow, we chose that picture. We probably chose it because that's what the editorial staff at whatever magazine or publication was looking for it. But you know what? That's not really what I like. But at that time, when things were moving so fast with magazines and da 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 da, you didn't really have a lot of time. Job was done, you moved on, and then you moved on, and then all of a sudden you didn't have time to look back. So um, I found a new angle on a lot of my old shoots, and I retouched the pictures in preparation for something. So that kept me very, very busy until I got this. I got the thing that I was kind of waiting for, which was what can I shoot? How can I shoot it? Um, and I did. My sister-in-law is a choreographer, a world-renowned choreographer in New York City, and she's always got these most incredible dancers working with her and for her. And we talked one day, and we said, well, let's, if you have a big studio, we can be 30 feet apart. You can wear a mask. Why don't you photograph some dancers? Okay. I did 5, and then I did 10, and then I did another 5, and all of a sudden it started to look really cool. And just great timing. I had a meeting with somebody who led me to a meeting with the publishing house, Rizzoli, and I showed them the 15 or 20 pictures, and they said, let's publish this. So I went on for the next 6 months, mostly on Mondays, photographing these amazing dancers. We photographed I mean, as the floodgates started to open, you photograph one dancer, they recommend others, but then we started to get some of the big hitters, all the leads and principals of New York City Ballet, American Ballet Theatre, Martha Graham, Alvin Ailey, and then we got like some legends like Cheetah Rivera came in and she posed for us, and we cut it off at 140. But I think it's the most significant project I've done in decades. I mean, ever. So that was my little pandemic thing. And what's nice about now being kind of shut down a little bit now is that it's really crunch time to get all the images ready and prepped for the book. So I'm very, very busy with that, which is cool. Also, I did my YouTube channel through the pandemic, which was kind of fun. It's called Complicated Things. It's kind of fun. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, no sickness in our family, no deaths, no, and I always try and bear in mind about, something that was actually quite good for me in some ways. It's been so absolutely awful for so many millions of people. I mean, so it's hard to kind of be enthusiastic about it, but I had an okay time.
Yeah, and it's great that the pandemic in a way has enabled you to do this project that you potentially wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And tell me more about this book that you're doing.
It's a real segue for me in everything I've ever done in photography, and I approached it wrong in so many ways. When we first started, it was pre-vaccine, so we have a massive space that we have just now. So I could be, we'd thought like 25, 30 feet was a reasonable distance if I was masked and they were unmasked while they were dancing. There was only like 3 people in the studio. And so I'm not really one for long lenses, so I don't have any. So the only kind of lens that I thought I could use was my like 110 portrait lens for my Leica. But it's beautiful if you step back. But the Leica S is not uh action photography camera in any way, shape, or form. So also I decided to use daylight because we had pretty light in the studio between like 11 and 3, and I wanted it black and white. But you know I'm so used to being the song and dance guy on set, doing the stuff. And then you just have these people that perform for a living, and in a way that is them doing their thing. And the first couple of dancers, I have my camera up, and I'm just not taking any photos. I'm just so amazed by what I'm seeing in front of me without me having to push, and wait for that potential reaction. This shit is just happening in front of me, and I don't know how to capture it. I don't know when to press the button. I don't know what's good, what's bad. I don't understand the form. So photographically, it was, I always say, yeah, I change things up. I do things differently. I play with my light, but I've never like stepped so far out my comfort zone in ever. And I think that's part of it, part of why it's I think it's a nice project, because I really was way out there. And it was fortunate because usually dance photographers, like other photographers, are have a way of doing things and to get the shots that they want. And I knew what I wanted with light and composition, but I really didn't have an understanding of what was a good dance pose, what was a bad dance pose. If you've got like a prima ballerina from New York City Ballet, and you take the photo a half a second late and their foot is pointed the wrong way, that shot's out. Um, so immediately I stopped going for perfection for that minute, but started to try and work on the off minutes and the getting into a pose or after the pose. And that seemed to work, and the dancers really seemed to like it because they were seeing themselves in a way that they didn't usually see. The other thing we did, which I think was an well, a couple of things we did. First of all, any profits from the book go back to the dancers. There's 140. If the book makes 140 bucks, we all get $1. So I think that was appreciated because, I've been a photographer for 35 years. I've been abused left and right. Anyone that can take the piss has tried, so as an artist, well, and I don't really think of artist, but as somebody in the arts, I did not want to be a dick to the people that were doing this for me. So that was number one. And number two, the other thing which I found was incredibly important for them, and something they very rarely had, was to get an opportunity to decide which images they liked. So after the shoot, I would literally send them a Lightroom folder. I mean, I took the ones out that I couldn't live with if they chose them, but they were getting like 70 to 80% of all the photos I took, and they would mark up the ones that they liked, and we would only work within these ones. So I didn't quite. I kind of started off as a thing for me to understand what they like, but it ended up being really significant because they really felt that they had a say in how they were presenting themselves, which I think is unusual for a lot of them. So it was cool. It's Rizzoli. It's be published in around a year. We're working super hard to get the design done and everything done. That has to be done way in advance. and it's my first book, and I'm excited about it. And if anyone can think of a title, because I can't find a title,
Yeah,
everything I
well,
come up with is bad.
you've emphasized in the past a lot about creating this sort of deep connection with your subject and making sure that you and them have this sort of this rapport. What are some just absolutely fail-safe go-to ways that you've come up with over the years to sort of warm up even the more camera shy and recalcitrant subjects?
Um, there's nothing. There's nothing. And I still like go, Christ, did I really just do that? Is that what I just said? Um, I don't think there's any. You see, what I think it is, what I, it's really interesting you asked that, because it's once again that process of me having to think about what I do. And then, first of all, when I think about what I do, I'm embarrassed. And second of all, so my trick for that is like not to think about it too much. But I think it comes. I think it's all. There's no natural ability for me there. I don't think. I think it's all come from practice and practicing my craft. And as a photographer who shoots people, or for anybody out there that shoots people, I mean, landscape's different because you can't, like, you're not going to get something better from a tree if you talk to, I don't know, maybe you are. But for people, your whole thing is like this ability to be human beings and communicate. Um, I mean, that's I don't want to get deep, but that's fucking life, isn't it? It's like, so I think to kind of get back to your question, it's about summing up a situation pretty quickly. Um, definitely try and do a little research on this person that you're photographing. I mean, I'm not talking about, just a simple, I mean, sometimes it is just a Wikipedia, but, you know, usually there's enough kind of stuff out there for you to get a sense of who this person is, kind of, what they like, if they have a family, I mean, listen, one, I always said before, if somebody's got kids, talk about the kids. I've got a kid, you've got a kid, we talk about our kids. Failed very badly one time when I said something. So, your kids doing all right? And he said, I don't talk about my kids. Like, oh, okay. So, as I say, however foolproof you think it is, then it's not. So, do definitely try and do a little research on whoever you're photographing. You might find they're into rollerblading, and you could talk about rollerblading. And I think even though it's contrived to the extent that they know that you've definitely read that about them, it's not like saying, "Oh, I loved you in Pulp Fiction." It's like, fuck off. So real life. Oh, you're in New York overnight. Where are you staying? Oh, cool. I've been there. It's a nice hotel. Oh, have you had oh, yeah, the Eggs Benedict. People want to talk about mon. I find mundane shit that is relatable across, because they I have no concept of what it's like to be under the pressure that they're under. They have no concept of the pressure I'm under. So stick to the mundane shit, and sometimes it gets interesting. Sometimes, having a sense of humor, very important. But anyway, I could talk about this forever. But there's
Yeah,
no practice. Read the room. Practice. Read the room. Practice. Read the room.
definitely. And actually, in the lead up to this recording this podcast, doing a quick Google on you, I found out that we have a commonality in that we both have gone to the University of Manchester.
Oh,
Obviously,
really?
you went 30 years ago. I'm there now, so things have changed, I assume, slightly. But
That's so funny. You see, listen, I'm watching the screen there, and you said that, and did you see my face go, really? So if
Yeah,
you
and
had your
that's
camera in your hand, you would have got that shot, right? So
yeah.
doesn't that work? So yeah. So that's listen. As I say, you just nailed it. You just answered my question so much better than could have done. But yeah. So when I was there, it was the Poly. I was at Manchester Poly, which I
Hmm.
think is Manchester Metropolitan University now.
Right.
Um, and it was. I mean, I loved it. I loved it. Are you from Manchester?
Sort of the general area, Derbyshire, south of Manchester, is originally, but
Derbyshire's not fucking Manchester. It's an hour away.
yeah, it is. But not
I
it's
hear you.
about train
From
ride an
north,
hour
up north.
up north.
Um. So yeah. So I mean, I did the best 4 years there. I really, really, really did. I mean, it was brilliant. I didn't learn too much about photography, but I learned how to smoke
Well,
cigarettes and drink coffee and talk to like the all the pretty people in the department.
that's what university is about. I mean, and from a photographer's perspective, I mean, you were studying photography at the time. What makes Manchester, or what made Manchester 30 years ago, a particularly interesting city? The people, or visually
There was
itself?
just so many. There was so many students of all different colors, shapes, sizes, and varieties that you just, if you got an opportunity to like, dip into these different things. I'm sure it's the same now, but like Monday was reggae night. So go see some reggae, go hang out, have a couple of beers with the reggae folks, and then Wednesday was disco night somewhere else, and it was just this never ending like loop of different things to do. Also, I'm going to age myself here, but the hacienda was still open,
Yeah,
so Friday night was the hacienda, man. That was, was what you did. I mean, life-changing experiences every Friday night. So
it's now a block of apartments.
sorry.
The hacienda is now a block of apartments.
Yeah, I know
So
it's kind of sad.
yeah,
Um, but so that was going on. It was like a really explosive music scene in Manchester at the time. The Mondays and New Order, and then on the other hand, there was like James and the Smiths, and you kind of couldn't like the Smiths and the Happy Mondays or New Order, so you had to kind of choose your. But I never chose. I always depending on who I was with, because I did like all the music, you know.
yeah,
But yeah, Manchester was something else. Just like the variety of things, and I think when I was there, it was like 40,000 students or something. It was just ridiculous. Fallowfield, all the curry houses in Fallowfield. I mean, it was just the best.
yeah.
Um,
My hall is 20 seconds from the start of the Curry Mile, so I'm
I'm
right
sorry, I
there.
missed what you said.
My student hall is 20 seconds from the start of the Curry Mile, so
Oh, there you go.
I'm right there. Yeah. Are there
Paragange
any?
1, Paragange 2, Paragange 3. I'm not
Yeah.
going to 3, it's terrible. Let's go to 2. It's the same restaurant. No, it isn't.
Are there any sort of projects that you worked on from that time, or you touched on earlier? You were sort of going through your archives from the last sort of 15 years. Are there any projects that you sort of rediscovered that you have a bit of a soft spot for, that are potentially lesser known about, but that you wished more people had seen?
Um, I I can definitely say that my interest for shooting portraits came from time at school. Um, I just knew that if we had a still life or a landscape type project, that I had no interest. So it was definitely people. And it was that really interesting time where you kind of realized in a lot of ways the power of photography, because yeah, there's a lot of people that don't like having the photograph taken, but there's a lot of people that do. And you know and you find yourself like start of that practice of how to ask somebody, oh, can I take your picture? Or different times, and you know, the listen. There's always, I mean, I think of the film Blow Up, but there's always been that kind of creepy element. And hey, can I take your picture? So, and I kind of realized that super early on, and really worked against that, and how to do this in a way and be very transparent about what we were trying to do. But still, I mean, um, some of these early photographs and some of the photographs I take now lead to friendships and long lasting friendships. I My wife is a woman in the business that used to give me work 20 years ago. And then when we got engaged and got married, she stopped giving me any work, and now I don't work for her anymore. But definitely Manchester was a place that it was at 4 years of discovery. Um, in retrospect, for me, it was probably a year and a half because I was partying too much the other 2.5 years. And I suppose maybe in retrospect, I would have worked a little harder at it. Save me some time and effort.
Yeah. Moving outside of your work, what are some creative outlets that you have outside of your day-to-day career that keep you creatively fulfilled, be it sports or your kids?
No sports for me. Well, I'll play a little golf. Like team sports were never for me. I like team photography. I like working in a team to be a photographer. As a photographer, uh, I suppose part of that and like a deep, 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 deep ego is that I'm in charge, but I can listen to what you say and show respect for it. And if it's a good idea and I take it, then I get the credit and you don't. So, there's that aspect. But I'm definitely a team player when it comes to photography, but I don't like competitive team sports. I don't like watching them or playing them. Bit weird. But I suppose in the last 7 or 8 years, most of my creativity outlet comes from, being a dad and trying to find creative ways to entertain my kid, which is exhausting in this day and age. Well, I'm sure it was for my parents as well, but um, a lot comes from that. I still read a lot, even though I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I'm not searching for creativity. I embrace it when it comes along, and but I'm fortunate enough that it does come along often enough. I never really get stifled. And when I'm super, super busy with photography work, I don't have time to think about anything else creative. I'm not. It's never something. I'm very fortunate. It's never something that's concerned me. It just happens when it happens.
Hmm. Um, Getting to the end of our time now, a couple more questions for you. There's a photographer that I'm a huge fan of called Peter McKinnon, who
No, yeah.
is a huge promoter of printing your photographs and having them physically in a tangible form. In your perspective, what are the sort of pros and cons of getting your prints printed? And
I don't see
do you
any
do that?
cons. I mean, it, listen, the reality of the world we live in is the reality, and most photography is consumed on devices, and I consume photography on devices, and I I create photography that's consumed on devices. But um, I have a lot of people that approach me like how to do this, or can you look at my work or whatever, young photographers or students. And I hate saying no. I really do. I try, I remember there was definitely a few people that spent time with me when I was in these situations and how incredibly helpful it was. So I try and do that. But one of the things that I insist is when you come and see me, I want to see one photograph on a piece of paper. I don't care if you go to Staples and just have print it out in a bloody color printer. I don't care. I just want to see something tangible. And My background in Manchester, growing up with dark rooms, and what an integral part of photography that was, and the print, and being able to step back and look at something, and it's just beyond important. Um, and one of the things which kind of like is weird in the industry now is like I'm retouching, I'm working on retouching this book project, and people say, "Oh, do you know how to retouch for print?" I'm like, "What? Is there another way to retouch?" Well, retouch for web. It's like, nah, I don't know how to retouch for web. I just know how to retouch pixel for pixel, that any fucking picture I make potentially could be a billboard, I'd like to think, because that's the quality that I aspire to for every photo I've taken. And I think that art is slowly disappearing. And when you do see stuff in print that is not properly done, you so can get away with it. I mean, listen, if this book was going to be an Instagram project, there's no way I'd be spending the amount of time that I'm doing, because it's not worth it. But when you see some, it's almost like, God, it sounds really dull, but it's almost like, when we accept a loss of quality for something because just that's what it is. Um and I think that photographers that are shooting for print, shooting film, or shooting large format cameras, or retouching for print, are becoming, rarer and rarer and rarer, and it's kind of more like a niche thing, where it wasn't before. And I try to adapt. I mean, so printing is something I do all the time. I'm always print. If I'm struggling between two pictures for a choice, I'm going to go in and print them both. Put them up on the wall and live with them for a minute. And that's also, you know, something else about. I mean, we could talk for hours about the advantages and disadvantages of digital, but even with digital, with the advantages and disadvantages, you still have the opportunity to make a photo print. Inkjet printers are incredible. And I feel that, people show me inkjet prints, and I don't know if they're darkroom prints or not, because the paper and everything is just, when you smell it and you can't smell the fixer. But apart from that, you can't tell the difference. So even if you're shooting on an iPhone, or shooting on a camera that's not particularly, you can still make a 10 by 8 print and really get to see what your image looks like. So printing, I agree with Mr. McKinnon, 100%. I actually really like him as well. I have one of his neutral density filters. Kind of bugged me to buy a filter with another photographer's name on it, but I did it. And I think he's amazing. I think so many photographers are amazing, but Peter McKinnon especially, because for that 4 days during the pandemic, when I tried to be a landscape photographer, and like, who'd you think about? You think Peter McKinnon. You get out there, it's
Yep.
like, no, this is not easy. This is not easy. So yeah, I agree with them completely, and printing is huge. I teach a few times a year. I teach a Leica Academy seminar, and the last day we do retouching and printing. And I will not, even I could, you can't teach retouching in the day, but color correction, or whatever we want to do in that morning. But the afternoon of the last day is everybody walks away with a print that they've made over the last few days. And I think that's amazingly important.
I agree. I agree. And just to sort of wrap things up here, you're thinking of joining us in Iceland for the creativity conferences in
Oh,
person.
100%. If I'm invited, and well, I appear to have been invited, but I can't wait. I'd love to. There's so many things appealing about that. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So fingers crossed everything works out and we'll see you there. And hopefully we'll see some people who are listening to this right now there as well as attendees.
I hope so.
One final question that I've asked every single guest so far on each episode of the podcast. It's quite a broad, open-ended one, and potentially a bit of a tricky question to answer concisely. But it's what does creativity mean to you?
You know, there's the honest answer. There's the answer that people want to hear. Creativity is how I make my living. Creativity is how I feed my family. So I don't really have the bandwidth for like wake, you know, hard one to answer. Really, I mean, if you think about it, it's such an easy question, but when you actually think about it, it's so real. I remember at college, we were, forced and encouraged to be in this creative mode. And every day I would like, oh, I'm going to do this, and oh, I'm going to do that. And then one of my tutors said, listen, if you're an inventor, you don't wake up every morning and go, what am I going to invent today? You've got something that you tried and it didn't quite work, and you've got something else that you tried. And I think for me, creativity is linking everything I've done before and then pushing forward with it to see what comes out next. And I rarely have the luxury of just like, I'm going to be creative today. I think the real skill, which I strive for every single day, is to try and add on to what I've learned before to make something new. I think that's an answer, isn't it?
It's
Move on to me.
It's a very tricky question. So yes, you answered it very well.
I mean, if I'm not paying my bills, then I'm not being creative. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Creativity is every aspect of your life, really. It's it's what you live and breathe.
I mean, creativity is how to tell my wife I'm going to Iceland for 5 days in the summer. We'll have to be incredibly creative in that approach.
Right. Yes, definitely. Well, it's been amazing to have you on, Mark. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I can't wait to see you in Iceland in August.
I look forward to it.
And thank you everybody for listening, and
thanks,
have a wonderful
guys.
rest of your day.
See you all soon.